was glowing with pride as I helped my 5-year-old daughter Emma into her pink tutu. The sequins we'd sewn on together caught the morning light. I called David 3 times that day to confirm he'd be there. He promised. But when the auditorium lights dimmed and the music started, the seat beside me was empty. After the performance, while other children ran into the arms of both parents, Emma looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes and asked quietly, "Where's Daddy?" I didn't know what to say. So the following week, when he told me he had another urgent work meeting, I made a decision. I followed him. What I found wasn't a conference room. It was something that would change everything. It started months before the recital. Emma had begged for ballet lessons since she was 4. Ever since she saw the Nutcracker at our local theater, her eyes went wide watching the dancers spin across the stage, and she whispered, "Mommy, I want to fly like that." So we enrolled her. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I'd drive her to Miss Caroline's Dance Academy, a small studio that smelled like rosin and dreams. She'd emerge an hour later, cheeks flushed, talking nonstop about plies and pirouettes and how Miss Caroline said she was a natural. David and I had been married for 10 years. We met in college, both studying business, both believing in practical dreams and building something stable together. He worked as a project manager at a tech company downtown, the kind of place with standing desks and free cold brew and mission statements about innovation. I'd gone part-time after Emma was born, working remotely as a consultant, something flexible that let me be home when she needed me. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had a 3-bedroom house in a good school district, a golden retriever named Biscuit, Sunday morning pancakes. The American dream, or close enough. But somewhere in the past 6 months, David changed. It was subtle at first. He started staying late at the office more often. 3 nights a week became 4, then 5. He'd come home after Emma was already asleep, smelling like coffee that had gone cold hours ago and something else I couldn't quite name. Exhaustion, maybe. Or distance. When I asked about work, he'd give vague answers about deadlines and difficult clients and how his boss was pushing the team hard. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We'd built a life on trust. The recital was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in early April. Spring had just started to warm the edges of winter, and the air smelled like cut grass and possibility. Emma had been practicing for 2 months. She knew her routine by heart, had performed it for me and Biscuit at least 50 times in our living room. She'd picked out her costume with me at the dance supply store, a pale pink tutu with layers of tulle that made her look like a little cloud. We spent an evening at the kitchen table sewing on sequins, one by one, her small fingers surprisingly careful. She wanted to sparkle, she said. Like a real ballerina. The morning of the recital, I woke up at 6, too excited to sleep. I made pancakes in the shape of ballet slippers, or tried to. They looked more like misshapen blobs, but Emma didn't care. She ate 3, bouncing in her chair, chattering about whether Miss Caroline would remember to cue her entrance music on time, and whether Grandma and Grandpa would cry when they saw her dance. My parents lived 2 hours away, but had promised to come. David was still asleep. I let him rest. He'd been working so hard, I thought. He needed it. At 8 in the morning, I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "What time is it?" he mumbled. 8, I said. "Just reminding you, Emma's recital is at 2. We need to leave by 1:30 to get good seats." There was a pause. Then, "Right, yeah. I'll be ready." "You promise?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light, not nagging. "You know how important this is to her." "I promise," he said. And I believed him. I spent the morning helping Emma get ready. I brushed her hair until it shone, then pulled it into a perfect bun, securing it with about 1,000 bobby pins. I painted her lips with a touch of my lipstick, just enough to make her feel grown up. She stared at herself in the mirror and whispered, "I look like a princess." "You look like a ballerina," I corrected gently. "Even better." She grinned, gap-toothed and glowing. At 11, I called David again. "Hey, just checking in. You're coming home soon to get ready, right?" Yeah, he said. I could hear the keyboard clicking in the background. "Just wrapping something up. I'll be home by noon." "Okay," I said. "Love you." "Love you too," he replied, distracted. The call ended. I told myself not to worry. Noon came and went. No David. At 1, I called again. It went to voicemail. I left a message, trying not to sound anxious. "Hey, it's me. Just making sure you're on your way. We need to leave in 30 minutes. At 1:15, I tried again. This time he answered. "I'm so sorry," he said, and my stomach dropped. "There's a crisis at work. The client presentation got moved up, and I'm the only one who knows the material. I'm trying to get out of here, I swear." "David," I said slowly, "today is Emma's recital." I know. I'm doing everything I can." "You promised her." "I'll be there," he said firmly. "I might be a few minutes late, but I'll be there. Save me a seat." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. So I packed Emma into the car, along with my parents who'd arrived an hour earlier, and we drove to the school auditorium. The parking lot was already crowded with minivans and excited children in costumes. Inside, the auditorium buzzed with energy. Parents jockeyed for the best seats. I found a row near the front, close enough to see Emma's face when she danced. I set my purse on the seat beside me, saving it for David. The lights dimmed at 2 o'clock sharp. The principal gave a short speech about the importance of arts education. Then the music started, and the first group of dancers took the stage. They were adorable and chaotic, 6-year-olds in butterfly costumes spinning in vaguely the right direction. The audience laughed and applauded. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for David to slip in, apologetic and breathless. He didn't. Emma's group was third. When she stepped onto the stage, my heart swelled so much it hurt. She looked so small under those bright lights, but she held her head high, shoulders back, just like Miss Caroline had taught her. The music was something classical, Tchaikovsky maybe, and the girls moved in a careful line, arms extended, trying so hard to be graceful. Emma's face was serious, concentrated. She hit every mark, every turn. She was perfect. I clapped so hard my palms stung. My mother cried beside me, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My father recorded everything on his phone, grinning. But the seat next to me stayed empty. I looked around at the other families. Couples holding hands. Fathers with flowers. Mothers whispering proudly to each other. And me alone, with an empty chair and a heart that was starting to crack. When the recital ended, all the dancers flooded into the lobby. Emma ran toward me, eyes shining, still wearing her tutu. "Did you see me, Mommy? Did you see?" "You were amazing," I said, scooping her into a hug. "The best ballerina up there." My parents echoed my praise, fussing over her, telling her she was a star. But then Emma pulled back and looked past me, scanning the crowd. "Where's Daddy?" she asked. The question was so simple, so innocent. And it shattered something inside me. "He had an emergency at work, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "But he's so proud of you. I recorded everything for him." She nodded, lips pressing together in that way kids do when they're trying not to cry. "Okay," she said quietly. Then she turned to my mother and started chattering about the performance, the moment already buried under practiced resilience. But I saw it. That flicker of disappointment. That little girl learning that the people who promise to show up don't always keep their word. We went out for ice cream afterward, the four of us. Emma got a double scoop of strawberry and seemed to recover, laughing at my dad's terrible jokes. But I couldn't shake the image of that empty seat. The promises David had made. The way he'd sounded so certain on the phone. "I'll be there. I'm doing everything I can." But he wasn't there. And I was starting to wonder if work was really the reason. That night, David came home at 10. I was on the couch, still in the dress I'd worn to the recital, staring at the videos on my phone. He walked in looking exhausted, tie loosened, hair disheveled. "I'm so sorry," he said immediately. The presentation ran over, and then the client had a million questions, and I couldn't just leave. I didn't look up. "You missed it." "I know. I feel terrible." He sat beside me, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. She asked where you were. He flinched. "I'll make it up to her. I promise. We'll do something special this weekend. Just the three of us." I finally looked at him. His eyes were red-rimmed, genuinely regretful. Or so it seemed. "You promised you'd be there today too," I said softly. "I know. I'm sorry. Work has just been insane lately." I wanted to fight, to yell, to demand he prioritize his family over his job. But I was too tired. So I just handed him my phone. "Watch the videos," I said. "See what you missed." He watched in silence, a small smile on his face as Emma twirled across the screen. When it ended, he set the phone down gently. "She's incredible," he said. "I'm so proud of her." Then you should have been there. He nodded, looking down at his hands. You're right. I should have. And that was it. No big argument. Just a quiet disappointment settling between us like dust. Later, after he'd gone upstairs to check on Emma, I sat alone in the dark living room and tried to remember when things had started to feel off. When had David become this person who made promises he couldn't keep? When had I become the wife who accepted excuses without question? I didn't have answers. Just a growing unease that something was very, very wrong. If you've ever had that gut instinct that something isn't right, leave a comment with the word instinct. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Because what happens next, you won't believe. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. Or maybe I didn't miss them. Maybe I just chose to ignore them because acknowledging them would mean confronting a reality I wasn't ready to face. The truth is, David had been slipping away from us for months, maybe longer. I just didn't want to see it. It started about 6 months before the recital. Little things. He began working late more often. Not just an hour or two, but entire evenings. He'd leave for the office at 7 in the morning and not come home until 9 or 10 at night. Sometimes later. When I asked about it, he'd say his company was going through a major transition, that there were layoffs looming, that he needed to prove himself indispensable. It sounded reasonable, believable, so I believed it. Then there were the phone calls. He started taking them in another room, closing the door behind him. His phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, now lived in his pocket. Always. Even at home. Even when he showered. He turned off all his notifications so the screen wouldn't light up with previews. When I asked why, he said it was to avoid work stress bleeding into family time. That also sounded reasonable. There was the night, about 3 months ago, when I woke up at 3 in the morning and found his side of the bed empty. I went downstairs and discovered him in the kitchen, sitting at the table in the dark, staring at his phone. The blue light illuminated his face, and his expression was one I'd never seen before. Soft. Almost tender. He was smiling at whatever he was reading, a small, private smile that made him look younger. When I said his name, he jumped, locked his screen immediately, and said he couldn't sleep so he was answering emails. At 3 in the morning. I didn't press. Maybe I should have. Our anniversary was 2 months ago. 10 years. A decade of marriage. I'd made reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. A small Italian place with red tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. I bought a new dress, black and fitted, the kind I used to wear before Emma was born, before my body changed, before I became more mother than woman. I felt good about it. Hopeful. Like maybe we could reconnect. Remember why we'd chosen each other in the first place. David canceled 4 hours before the reservation. He called from work, voice tight with stress, and said his boss needed him for an emergency presentation. I'm so sorry, he said. I'll make it up to you, I swear. We'll go next weekend. But next weekend came, and went without mention of it. I ate dinner alone that night, leftover Chinese food at the kitchen table, while Emma watched cartoons in the living room. I'd lit a candle anyway, a single taper in the center of the table, and sat there watching it burn down while I wondered when my marriage had become something I celebrated alone. The distance wasn't just emotional. It was physical too. He stopped touching me. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just gradually. The morning kiss goodbye became a quick peck, then a wave from the door. Sitting on the couch together turned into him scrolling on his phone while I watched TV. In bed, we slept on opposite sides, a canyon of cold sheets between us. The last time we'd made love was months ago, and even then it felt perfunctory, like checking off a box on a to-do list. I started noticing other things too. The way he'd come home freshly showered, his hair still damp, even though he'd showered in the morning before work. The occasional unfamiliar smell on his clothes, not perfume exactly, but something floral and light. Laundry detergent maybe, or air freshener. I told myself I was being paranoid, that stress made people behave strangely, that I was reading too much into normal things. But then there were the lies. Small ones mostly. He said he was working late on a Tuesday, but when I called the office phone at 8 that night to ask him to pick up milk, it rang and rang with no answer. He said he had a client lunch that ran long, but his credit card statement showed a charge at a family restaurant across town at 2 in the afternoon. The kind of place with crayons and kids' menus. When I asked about it, he looked confused for just a second before saying, "Oh, yeah, the client brought his kids." It happens. Sure. Reasonable. I became a person I didn't recognize. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower, my hands shaking as I scrolled through texts and emails. They were mostly benign. Work stuff. Group chats with college friends about fantasy football. But there were gaps. Entire conversations that seemed to be missing. Messages that referenced inside jokes I didn't understand. Once, I saw a text from a number with no name attached. It said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." He'd responded with a heart emoji. When I asked who it was, he said it was his co-worker Brad being sarcastic about a team meeting. I nodded and smiled and felt sick to my stomach. I told myself I was being crazy, that marriages go through rough patches, that work stress is real and valid, that I needed to trust my husband, the man I'd chosen to build a life with. But trust is a funny thing. Once the cracks start showing, you can't stop seeing them. And the more I looked, the more I found. There was the time I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for flowers. Expensive ones, roses and lilies, the kind you buy for something special. I hadn't received flowers in over a year. When I asked about it, he said he'd bought them for his assistant's birthday. "You bought your assistant a $100 bouquet?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "It was a milestone birthday," he said. "She's been with the company forever." Everyone chipped in. I wanted to ask if everyone's name was on the card. I didn't. Then there were the weekends. David used to love Saturdays with Emma. They'd build elaborate forts out of couch cushions, have tea parties with stuffed animals, ride bikes around the neighborhood. But lately, he'd started finding reasons to be gone. Errands that took 3 hours. Sudden work emergencies on Sunday mornings. Golf outings with coworkers I'd never heard him mention before. He'd come home late, smelling like fresh air and sometimes chlorine, saying he'd stopped at the gym after. I didn't know my husband belonged to a gym. I confided in my best friend Sarah one afternoon over coffee while Emma was at a playdate. "Do you think David's having an affair?" I asked, the words feeling strange and foreign in my mouth. Sarah stirred her latte slowly, thinking. "I don't know," she said carefully. "But I do know you're not crazy for wondering. Trust your gut." My gut was screaming, but my heart didn't want to listen. The week after Emma's recital, David announced another late meeting. It was a Thursday night. He mentioned it casually over breakfast, not quite meeting my eyes. "Big presentation to a potential client," he said. "Could run until 9 or 10. "On a Thursday?" I asked. "Yeah, they're only available in the evenings. You know how it is." I nodded, smiled, said good luck. And as he kissed Emma goodbye and walked out the door, something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, definitive break. I was done accepting excuses, done living in uncertainty. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. I dropped Emma off at our neighbor Linda's house at 5:30 that evening, telling her I had a last-minute doctor's appointment. Linda, sweet and retired and always happy to babysit, waved away my apologies. "Take your time, honey," she said. "Emma and I will bake cookies." I thanked her and left before my voice could shake. I drove home and changed into dark jeans and a black hoodie, feeling ridiculous and desperate and determined all at once. I downloaded a car tracking app the night before, one of those family locator things marketed for safety. I'd linked it to David's phone under the guise of, "so we can always find each other in emergencies." He'd barely glanced at the notification before approving it. Now I opened the app and saw his location. He wasn't at his office. He was 15 minutes away, in a residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. My hands were shaking as I started the car. I kept telling myself there'd be a reasonable explanation. Maybe the client lived there. Maybe it was an unusual meeting location. Maybe I was about to feel very foolish for spying on my own husband. But I couldn't stop. I had to know. I followed the blinking dot on my phone, driving slowly through unfamiliar streets lined with oak trees and neat lawns. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalks. A man walked his dog. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, so unlike the storm raging inside me. The dot stopped moving. I turned onto the street and saw David's car parked in front of a light blue house with white shutters and a well-maintained garden. Roses bloomed along the fence. A child's bike lay on its side in the front yard. I parked 2 houses down, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. For a long moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, telling myself to leave, to go home, to stop this before I saw something I couldn't unsee. But I didn't leave. I couldn't. I had to know. And then the front door opened. A woman stepped out. She was pretty in an understated way, with long dark hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater. She looked like she could be a teacher or a nurse or someone's kind neighbor. She was smiling. And she wasn't alone. Holding her hand was a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with brown hair and 2 neat braids and a pink dress with butterflies on it. The woman waved at someone inside the house. And then David stepped out. My David. My husband. The father of my child. He smiled at the woman, that same soft smile I'd seen on his face in the kitchen at 3 in the morning. And then the little girl let go of the woman's hand and ran toward him, shouting something I couldn't hear from inside my car. David crouched down and opened his arms wide, and the little girl launched herself at him. And he caught her and spun her around, laughing. She wrapped her small arms around his neck, and said something that made him laugh harder. The woman walked over, still smiling, and said something to David. He nodded. The 3 of them went inside together. The door closed behind them, and I sat in my car, hands frozen on the wheel, unable to breathe. I need you to understand something. What I saw in that moment didn't just break my heart. It shattered my entire reality, because this wasn't just an affair. This was a family, a whole other life David had built, separate from ours, complete and functioning and real. That little girl called him Daddy. I heard it. I saw the way she ran to him, the way he caught her with practiced ease, the way they moved together like they'd done it 1,000 times before. This wasn't new. This had history, depth, roots. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone as I lifted it and started taking pictures. I didn't think. I just documented. Photos of David's car. Photos of the house. Photos of him and the woman and the child through the front window, visible in the warm light of what looked like a dining room. They were sitting at a table. The woman brought out plates. The little girl was chattering, hands moving animatedly. David laughed at something she said. They looked like a family having dinner. Because they were. Subscribe if you want to know what I discovered next. Trust me, this story gets even more unbelievable. I sat in that car for 2 hours, watching through the windows as they ate dinner. As the little girl showed David something, maybe a drawing, as the woman cleared the table and David helped. Their movements coordinated like a dance they'd practiced. At one point, they all moved to what must have been the living room. I could see flickering light, probably a TV. The little girl sat on David's lap. He rested his chin on the top of her head. The woman curled up next to them, her hand on David's shoulder. It was so painfully domestic, so normal, that I felt like I was watching a scene from someone else's life. Except it was my husband in that tableau. My husband played father to a child who wasn't mine. My husband is someone I didn't recognize. I took more photos. Videos. My phone's storage filled up with evidence of a truth I still couldn't quite accept. Around 8:30, I watched the little girl yawn, saw the woman scoop her up and carry her toward the back of the house, presumably to bed. David followed. They were gone for about 20 minutes. When they came back, it was just the 2 of them. They sat on the couch together, close. The woman's head on David's shoulder, his arm around her. They looked comfortable, settled, like this was how they always spent their evenings. I couldn't watch anymore. I started the car and drove home. My vision blurred with tears I didn't remember starting to cry. I picked up Emma from Linda's, thanked her with a smile I didn't feel, and brought my daughter home. I gave her a bath, read her 3 stories, tucked her into bed, and kissed her forehead. She asked when Daddy would be home. Soon, I lied. Sleep tight, baby. Love you, Mommy, she whispered, already drifting off. Love you more, I whispered back. I went to our bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the floor with my back against the tub and cried until there were no tears left, only dry, heaving sobs that felt like they'd tear me apart. Every memory was suddenly suspect. Every late night, every missed event, every distracted kiss. How long had this been going on? Who was this woman? Who was that child? And most terrifying of all, who was my husband? David came home around 11:30. I heard the front door open, his keys on the table, his footsteps on the stairs. I was in bed, pretending to sleep, my back to his side of the mattress. He got ready for bed quietly, then slipped under the covers. He didn't try to touch me. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. He fell asleep quickly, deeply, like a man with nothing weighing on his conscience. I lay awake until the sky started to lighten. staring at the wall, wondering how I'd married a stranger. The next morning, I made pancakes like always. David came downstairs in his work clothes, gave Emma a kiss on the head, and grabbed his coffee. "Thanks for breakfast," he said. "No problem," I replied, my voice sounding almost normal. He left for work. Emma asked if she could watch cartoons. I said yes and sat at the kitchen table with my phone, scrolling through the photos from the night before. In the harsh morning light, they looked even worse. Undeniable. Real. I called Sarah. "I need a favor," I said. "Can Emma stay with you for a few hours?" "Of course," she said immediately. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "But it will be." I dropped Emma off, then drove to a part of town I'd only been to once before, to an office building with tinted windows and a discreet sign. I'd looked up private investigators the night before, read reviews, chosen the one with the highest ratings and the kindest sounding testimonials. I needed answers. And I needed them from someone who knew how to find them. The detective's name was Marcus Chin. He was in his mid-50s, balding, with warm brown eyes and a handshake that felt solid and reassuring. His office was small and neat, with filing cabinets lining one wall and a single window overlooking the parking lot. He offered me coffee. I accepted even though I knew I wouldn't drink it. I just needed something to hold. "Tell me what's going on," he said gently, sitting across from me with a notepad. So I told him. About David's late nights. About the missed recital. About following him. About the house, the woman, the little girl. About how my entire marriage now felt like a lie. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes, his expression neutral but kind. When I finished, he set down his pen. "I'm sorry you're going through this," he said. "I know this isn't easy, but you did the right thing coming here. You need facts. And I can get you those." I hired him on the spot. He said he'd start immediately, that he'd tail David for a few days, dig into his finances, run background checks on the woman if I could provide details. I showed him the photos. He studied them carefully. "Can I send these to myself?" he asked. I nodded. He forwarded them to his email, then handed my phone back. "I'll have preliminary information for you in 3 to 5 days," he said. "Try to act normal at home. I know that's hard, but you don't want to tip him off." "How do I act normal?" I asked, my voice breaking, "when everything is falling apart?" "1 hour at a time," he said. "That's all you can do." Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I cooked dinner. I did laundry. I helped Emma with her homework. I smiled when David came home, asked about his day, listened to his vague answers about meetings and deadlines and difficult clients. At night, I lay beside him in bed, our bodies not touching, and wondered how many other nights he'd done this, laying next to me while thinking about her. About them. How many times had he whispered "I love you" while building a second life behind my back? On the 3rd day, Marcus called. "I have information," he said. "Can you come to my office?" I went immediately, leaving Emma with Sarah again. This time I didn't bother with an excuse. Sarah knew. She hugged me at the door and said, "Whatever you need." I drove to Marcus's office with my hands clenched tight on the wheel, bracing myself for whatever truth was about to hit me. Marcus had files spread across his desk. He looked at me seriously. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But tell me anyway." He opened the first folder. "The woman's name is Jennifer Lawson," he began. "She's 34, works as a pediatric nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. She's been living in that house for 6 years. And the little girl is her daughter. Her name is Lily. She just turned 6 years old last month." 6 years old. The number hit me like a fist. Emma was 5. How long has David known her? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus hesitated. 7 years, he said finally. They met at a medical technology conference. David's company was exhibiting. Jennifer was there representing her hospital. According to what I've been able to piece together, they had an affair. It lasted about 6 months. Then it ended. Or so she thought. "What do you mean, so she thought?" Marcus slid another document toward me. Jennifer got pregnant. She told David. He apparently panicked, saying he needed time to figure things out. According to a friend of hers I spoke with, he promised to leave his wife. That was you. But he didn't. He came back to you. Presumably tried to make things work. Except Jennifer had the baby. And David stayed involved. He's been supporting Lily financially this whole time. He sees her regularly. 3 times a week, usually. Sometimes more. I felt like the room was tilting. 3 times a week? Yes. He's been doing this for 6 years. Maintaining 2 separate families. Jennifer believes you and David are divorced, that you're difficult about custody and visitation, that he's trying his best to be a good father despite a bitter ex-wife. The words weren't making sense. She doesn't know we're married? No. David told her you divorced 2 years ago, that you got the house and primary custody of Emma, and that you make his life hell every chance you get. She thinks she's the supportive girlfriend helping him navigate a difficult co-parenting situation. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was either laugh or scream. So he's been lying to both of us, I said. For 6 years. Telling me he's working late. Telling her he's dealing with his crazy ex-wife. Playing house with 2 different families. I'm afraid so, Marcus said gently. I stopped laughing. And the recital. Emma's ballet recital. The one he missed. Marcus checked his notes. Lily had a school play that same day. At 2 o'clock. David attended that instead. Of course he did. Of course. It wasn't even a choice. He'd picked one daughter over the other, and left Emma waiting in the wings, wondering where her daddy was. There's more, Marcus said carefully. I looked up at him. More? How can there possibly be more? He pulled out a bank statement. David opened a separate checking account 4 years ago. He's been funneling money into it from his paycheck before it hits your joint account. That's how he's been paying child support for Lily without you noticing. About $1,500 a month. $1,500. For 6 years. I did the math in my head. Over $100,000. Money that should have gone to our family. To Emma's college fund. To the new roof we'd been putting off. To literally anything other than funding a secret second life. He's also listed as Lily's father on her birth certificate, Marcus continued. And Jennifer listed him as an emergency contact at Lily's school. To all appearances, they're a normal family. He attends parent-teacher conferences. Birthday parties. Last month he was photographed at Lily's kindergarten graduation. He slid a photo toward me. There was David, beaming, holding Lily on his shoulders while Jennifer stood beside them, smiling at the camera. They looked happy. They looked real. They looked like everything I thought I had. I picked up the photo and stared at it. This wasn't just an affair. This was a double life, carefully constructed and meticulously maintained. This was a man who kissed 2 daughters goodbye, who sat at 2 dinner tables, who made 2 women believe they were loved. And he'd been doing it so well for so long that neither of us had any idea the other existed. I need to go, I said, standing abruptly. Marcus stood too. I know this is overwhelming, he said. Take your time processing. And when you're ready, I can recommend some excellent family lawyers. Thank you, I said automatically. I walked out of his office in a daze, got into my car, and sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes, staring at nothing. Everything made sense now. Every late night. Every missed event. Every time he'd choose work over us. It hadn't been working at all. It had been them. Lily and Jennifer. His other family. The one he'd chosen, over and over again, while I waited at home believing his lies. I drove to Sarah's house. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. Emma was playing in the backyard with Sarah's kids. I sat at Sarah's kitchen table and told her everything. Every horrible detail. She listened, getting paler with each revelation. When I finished, she reached across the table and gripped my hand. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked at her. I'm going to burn his life to the ground, I said. And I meant it. That night, I went home and printed out every photo, every bank statement, every piece of evidence Marcus had given me. I organized them carefully in a folder. When David came home at 10, smelling like someone else's life, I was waiting in the living room. The folder sat on the coffee table between us. Emma was asleep upstairs. It was just us. Sit down, I said. My voice was steady, calm. He looked at me, confused, then at the folder. What's this? He asked. Sit down, I repeated. He sat. I pushed the folder toward him. Open it. He opened it slowly. I watched his face as he flipped through the photos. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands started to shake. He looked up at me, eyes wide. I can explain, he started. Don't, I said, cutting him off. Don't insult me by lying anymore. I know everything. About Jennifer. About Lily. About your entire secret life. So if you're going to say anything, make it the truth. For once. He started crying. My husband, who never cried, who prided himself on being strong and in control, broke down right there on our couch. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. You never meant to have an affair? I asked coldly. You never meant to have a child with another woman? You never meant to lie to me for 6 years? It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said. It just happened. Jennifer got pregnant, and I panicked, and then Lily was born, and I couldn't just abandon her. She's my daughter. So is Emma, I said. But that didn't stop you from abandoning her at her recital. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I know I messed up. But you have to understand, it's been so hard. Trying to be there for both of them. Trying to make everyone happy. I'm drowning. You're drowning, I said, my voice rising. You've been living a double life, lying to everyone, and you're the victim here? That's not what I meant, he said quickly. I love you. I love Emma. But I also love Lily. And Jennifer, she needed me. I couldn't just walk away. But you could walk away from us, I said. Every time you chose to go to them instead. He didn't have an answer for that. He just sat there, crying, looking pathetic and broken. And I felt nothing. No pity. No sympathy. Just a cold, crystalline clarity. This man had stolen years from me. He'd made me doubt myself, question my worth, wonder why I wasn't enough. And all along it wasn't about me. It was about him. His choices. His lies. His cowardice. I want a divorce, I said. The words came out easier than I expected. He looked up, eyes red and swollen. Don't say that. We can work through this. I'll end things with Jennifer. I'll choose you and Emma. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. Fix this. I repeated. David, you have another child. A 6-year-old daughter, who thinks you're her father. You can't just end that. And even if you could, why would I want you back? You've proven exactly who you are. A liar. A cheat. Someone who makes promises to little girls and breaks them without a second thought. He reached for my hand. I jerked it away. Please, he begged. Don't throw away 10 years of marriage. Think about Emma. She needs her father. Emma needed her father at her ballet recital, I said. She needed him at bedtime all those nights you weren't there. She needed him to be honest and present and real. And you chose Lily instead. So don't you dare use our daughter as an excuse now. I stood up. You have until the end of the week to move out, I said. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. My lawyer will be in touch. You already have a lawyer? He asked, sounding shocked. I've had one for 3 days, I said. Ever since I found out my husband is a fraud. I walked toward the stairs, then paused and turned back. One more thing. Were you with Lily when you missed Emma's recital? He hesitated, then nodded. There was a school play. She was a sunflower in the spring pageant. She'd been practicing for weeks. Get out of my house, I said quietly. He stood. I'll go to a hotel, he said. But this isn't over. I'm not giving up on us. There is no us, I said. There hasn't been for a long time. I just didn't know it. He left. The door closed behind him, and I stood there in the silent house, feeling like I could finally breathe for the first time in months. The next morning, I sat Emma down and tried to explain in terms a 5-year-old could understand. Daddy and I are going to live in different houses for a while, I said gently. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. He loves you so much. Why? She asked. Why do you have to live apart? Because sometimes grown-ups have problems they can't fix, I said. And it's better for everyone if we have some space. She thought about this. Is it because he missed my recital? She asked quietly. My heart broke. No, baby. It's because of grown-up stuff that has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. Okay, she said, but she looked sad. So sad. I pulled her into a hug and held her tight, wishing I could protect her from all of this. But I couldn't. The damage was done. All I could do was try to build something better from the ruins. The divorce process was brutal. David fought me on everything at first, trying to get joint custody, trying to keep the house, trying to minimize his child support obligations. But then I played my card. I told my lawyer to inform his lawyer that I had extensive documentation of his other family, including financial records showing he'd been supporting another child for 6 years. If he wanted to fight, I'd make sure everything became public record, including the fact that he'd been committing financial fraud by hiding income and assets. He backed down after that. We settled out of court. I got the house, primary custody of Emma, and a generous child support payment. He got visitation rights every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. And the knowledge that everyone now knew exactly who he was. Jennifer found out the truth when I called her. I thought she deserved to know. She answered on the second ring, voice friendly. Hello. Is this Jennifer Lawson? I asked. Yes, who's this? My name is Catherine. I'm David's wife. There was a long silence. His ex-wife, you mean? She said finally, voice cooler. No, I said. His wife. We're still married. We've been married for 10 years. I have a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. And up until about a week ago, I had no idea you or Lily existed. Another silence. Then quietly, that's not possible. I have our marriage certificate, I said. Our joint tax returns. Photos of our wedding. David has been lying to both of us. I heard her breathing, fast and shallow. He said you were divorced 2 years ago. He showed me papers. He showed you fake papers, I said. I'm sorry. I know this is horrible, but you needed to know the truth. She hung up on me. I didn't blame her. A week later, I heard through Marcus, who'd kept tabs on the situation, that Jennifer had ended things with David. She was furious, devastated, and planning to file for full custody of Lily with supervised visitation only. David was homeless, staying in hotels, calling me constantly to beg for another chance. I blocked his number. 6 months later, here we are. Emma and I live in the house, just the two of us in Biscuit. We've painted her room her favorite color, purple with silver stars on the ceiling. She's still in ballet, and she has another recital next month. This time, the seat next to me will be empty not because someone broke a promise, but because we don't need anyone else. We're enough. Just the two of us. David sees Emma every other weekend. He picks her up on Friday evening and brings her back Sunday night. She comes home quiet, withdrawn, clearly stressed by the divided loyalties and the confusing reality of having a father who lives elsewhere and apparently has another daughter she's never met. I'm considering reducing his visitation. My lawyer says we have grounds, given his history of deception and unreliability. Emma's therapist agrees it might be best. We'll see. As for me, I'm learning to rebuild. I'm working full-time again, consulting for multiple clients. I'm saving money. I'm taking Emma on weekend trips, just the two of us, making new memories that aren't tainted by lies. I started going to therapy too, unpacking years of gaslighting and betrayal. It's hard. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm sad. Some days I'm just numb. But I'm healing. Slowly. And I'm teaching Emma something I wish I'd learned sooner. That you can't make someone choose you. And you shouldn't have to. The right people show up. They keep their promises. They don't make you wonder or wait or doubt. They're just there. Consistently. Honestly. Really. The truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living in a beautiful lie. I know that now. And if I could go back and tell myself anything, on that morning before the recital when I was so full of hope and trust, it would be this. Pay attention to the empty chairs. They're telling you something. Listen. So what do you think? Have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything? Have you ever followed someone and regretted what you found, or been grateful you finally knew? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Next week, I'm sharing another story that's going to shock you. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for listening to mine.